Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. I'm Ethan Foster, your humble observer of human quirks and quandaries. Every week, we explore the building blocks of our well-being.
And I'm Alara Sky. We're here to give you a healthy dose of insight, sprinkled with a dash of wit.
Today, we're delving into the topic of childbirth, specifically how modern medicine has turned what was once a very primal, natural experience into something that often resembles a high-stakes medical drama. I'm talking about interventions, complications, and the big one, C-sections.
The conversation is swirling around whether we really need all these orchestrated hospital procedures. There's been a century-long push to medicalize childbirth. It's almost as if we've collectively decided we can't handle a process that, ironically, our bodies have been handling for thousands of years.
To be fair, some interventions have been life-saving. Nobody wants to demonize having skilled professionals around. But here's where it gets interesting. Many standard procedures actually set up a chain reaction of interventions. It's like knocking down that first domino, and before you know it, you're in an operating room.
Exactly. Hospitals have a standard playbook. You come in, you get prepped, you might receive certain medications, and those meds might affect contractions. Then, if the contractions are considered too weak, let's add more medication to rev them up. If things stall, time is ticking, tension is mounting, and voila, a scalpel gets invited to the party.
And that's where we get the classic cascade of interventions. It sounds like the title of a suspense thriller. Cascade of interventions, will they or won't they slice you open?
You jest, but real talk. A C-section is major abdominal surgery. That's not a mere footnote to a birth story. It's weeks of recovery, big scars, possible complications, and that's if everything goes smoothly.
Let's not forget the baby in all this. C-sections bypass the usual route of entry. No picking up that microflora in the birth canal, for instance. Research has shown how that might predispose a child to immunological or neurological challenges down the road.
Yes, the fancy term is the microbiome. We're basically walking bacteria buffets, and that's a good thing. The baby's introduction to life involves getting seeded by mom's beneficial bacteria. But if the first introduction to the world is through an incision, that microbial handshake can be missed or messed up.
Now, sometimes a baby absolutely needs an emergency exit. That's not in dispute. But the question remains, why do we see so many C-sections, often around the time doctors want to get home for dinner?
I have this image of an obstetrician glancing at the clock and saying, "Time to expedite things, folks." It's known that in certain facilities, rates spike during shift changes, weekends, or holidays. You might think the baby has an impeccable sense of comedic timing, but the data suggests otherwise.
Then we have the postpartum period for the mother. A 4 to 6 week recovery is no small affair. You've just welcomed a new baby who needs constant care, and you're simultaneously recovering from major surgery. Add to that a list of potential complications, infections, adhesions that can cause trouble later, lingering pain, possible anesthetic side effects, you name it.
It's like the hospital hands you your sweet newborn and a subscription to Chronic Issues Monthly. Abdominal scarring, it turns out, can wreak havoc on your nervous system for years. I've even heard stories of folks discovering that their random back pain traced back to a scar from a C-section.
Yes, that scar can create adhesions in the uterus. If you have a second pregnancy, those adhesions might invite complications like placenta accreta, where the placenta latches onto the uterine wall in the wrong spot. That ups the likelihood of repeat C-sections.
It's a cycle. C-section begets another C-section. I heard once that if you have that weakened uterine scar, doctors can get jumpy about you going through labor naturally. Next thing you know, a second or even third C-section seems inevitable.
While we're diving into the baby's side, let's talk respiratory distress syndrome. That's a big phrase for baby's lungs aren't quite ready. When the baby is delivered by C-section, there's no mechanical squeeze pushing fluid out of the lungs. Babies born too early that way are more prone to breathing issues.
And beyond that, let's get into the longer-term stuff. Some studies show higher odds of asthma, allergic rhinitis, and autoimmune conditions in C-section babies. One theory is that missing the microbial introduction changes how the immune system calibrates itself.
Yes, many large-scale studies point in that direction. Asthma rates can jump by anywhere from 20 to 40%. The data also hint at increased susceptibility to certain autoimmune issues, like juvenile arthritis, type 1 diabetes, celiac disease, and so on.
Which is fascinating because we don't always connect, say, a child's food intolerance at age 7 to how they popped into the world. But apparently, the blueprint might be laid out quite early.
The neurological angle is no slouch either. Some research suggests that kids born via C-section have a slightly higher incidence of ADHD, autism, or differences in cognitive performance. It's not a guarantee, of course, but the associations are notable.
They've even looked at mice in labs, delivering some by C-section, and found changes in their brains, like more cell death in certain regions and behavioral shifts. You can't exactly interview a mouse about its birth trauma, but science tries.
We also see differences in mother-infant bonding. Some mothers report they feel a bit detached. Maybe it's because they come out of anesthesia groggy, or they were separated from the baby for a while.
Which makes perfect sense. Childbirth is more than just getting the baby out. It's a carefully orchestrated physiological event involving hormones like oxytocin, often called the love hormone. Interrupting that process might alter how mother and baby sync up emotionally.
Some folks share anecdotal experiences that C-section babies don't cry with the same vigor initially, or that they're more sensitive to touch. It could sound a bit mystical, but many cultures have recognized a deep significance in that journey down the birth canal.
Indeed. And with all these concerns in mind, it's not about scaring people, just making sure they have full awareness. A portion of births will always require that surgical approach. The problem arises when we treat C-sections as a convenient plan A rather than a last resort.
One of the big questions is, what exactly qualifies as a high-risk pregnancy? Is it truly high risk, or is the label applied too liberally because of, say, a prenatal ultrasound result that might not even be accurate?
Ultrasounds can be great tools, yet they can also lead to overdiagnosis. If you're labeled high risk, you might get funneled down a path of interventions. Stress runs high, hospital staff hovers, and that can create, ironically, more complications.
And that's not to dismiss genuine high-risk scenarios, like severe preeclampsia, significant placental problems, major fetal distress, or unusual baby positioning. Sometimes the baby decides to go breech or sideways, and you're stuck with a puzzle that a straightforward vaginal delivery can't solve.
Breech births can be done vaginally by skilled practitioners, but not everyone is comfortable with it, and not every facility permits it. In some places, if your baby's backside is presenting first, you might as well clear the operating room.
Also, if you're having twins or more, that's obviously a situation where you want an expert around. But again, it doesn't always have to be an automatic surgery.
This is where nuanced conversations with midwives or enlightened obstetricians come into play. You want someone who will weigh all options, not just default to a protocol that's been in place for decades.
All this ties into a bigger picture about our children's health. People like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. are spearheading discussions, pointing out that chronic illnesses in kids have skyrocketed. We can't ignore how birth practices might feed into that.
If half of children are facing chronic health challenges, we should be turning over every stone. That includes how we're introducing them to the world. Maybe it's not all about genetic predispositions. Maybe our interventions are shaping things more than we realize.
So, the big question becomes, how do we balance caution with the amazing capabilities of modern medicine? Because truly, no one's suggesting we roll back every single intervention and reenact the Stone Age. It's about using each tool judiciously.
Exactly. The trouble is there's a profitability factor in medicine. Hospitals earn more from certain interventions. Also, the system can be quick to label something as an absolute necessity, even when it might be borderline.
It's a pattern. Many things originally devised for emergencies end up being used routinely. Then we realize they come with downsides. But by that time, it's an entrenched practice that's tough to peel back.
We see that with vaccines, with medication guidelines, and obviously with C-sections. Each intervention has a place, but when used too liberally, the cumulative harms can outshine the benefits.
So, dear listeners, if you or someone you know is contemplating a birth plan, the main takeaway is to stay informed. Investigate what typically happens in a hospital birth, what triggers the cascade of interventions, and if there are gentler alternatives.
And don't be afraid to ask tough questions. If your doctor says, we might need a C-section, find out why. Is there a pressing medical reason? Or is it more about scheduling or borderline risk factors?
Some mothers explore natural birthing classes or midwife-led births, which reduce the odds of needing a C-section. If a transfer to the hospital is necessary, at least they know they tried the less invasive approach first.
Yes, some folks choose home births with backup plans. Others go for birthing centers that strike a middle ground between a purely home environment and a hospital. The key is being ready for emergencies but not running headlong into interventions by default.
There's also the matter of postpartum care. If you do get a C-section, consider ways to recover properly and address potential scarring. Physical therapy, specialized massage, or other supportive therapies might help avoid long-term complications.
Nobody likes to think about how a scar might cause chronic pain or weird nerve issues, but better to know it's a possibility so you can tackle it early.
We often forget how many facets of health hinge on something as basic as how did you arrive on planet Earth. Childbirth shapes a child's immune system, neurological wiring, future bonding experiences, pretty fundamental building blocks.
And with chronic illnesses on the rise, examining every piece of the puzzle is crucial. It's not about blame or shame for parents who ended up with a C-section. It's about having real conversations, less fear, and more knowledge.
Precisely. In an ideal world, we'd have a balanced approach, respect the natural process, but have the medical cavalry ready if an actual crisis arises.
One day, hopefully, folks won't feel railroaded into a surgical procedure they might not need. Instead, they'll have a team that respects the intelligence of the body, stepping in only when it's truly necessary.
I'd like to think we're heading in that direction. More parents are speaking up, more data is coming out, and, ironically, some doctors themselves prefer home births or birth centers for their own families. That's a telling sign.
When your obstetrician friend opts for a midwife in a living room, it might make you wonder about the hidden complexities of hospital deliveries.
So, as we wrap up our discussion on C-sections, let's highlight the bottom line. It's major surgery with real risks for mother and child. But if it's necessary, it can be life-saving. The trouble is determining when it's truly necessary.
If we can all get a bit savvier about this, maybe we'll see fewer routine slices and a return to more confident, supported births. Mothers have options. Babies benefit when those options are carefully weighed.
And so do the rest of us, because that child grows up to be an adult who either grapples with chronic health issues or thrives with a well-tuned immune and nervous system. The earliest moments matter in ways we're still fully uncovering.
Before we sign off, I want to say a hearty thanks to Dr. Mercola's community for championing awareness about these topics. Opening our eyes to the intricacies of birth is part of nurturing genuine health.
Indeed. And that's it for today's episode of Dr. Mercola's Cellular Wisdom. We hope we stirred your curiosity about how we enter this world and the ripple effects of that moment.
Absolutely. Join us next time when we peer under another rock in the field of natural health.
Until then, I'm Ethan Foster.
And I'm Alara Sky. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Stay informed, stay curious. Our cells are counting on it.
Catch you on the next episode. Stay well, folks.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe now and click the notification bell so you never miss an update. See you in the next video.